Greeting Westmont Algebra students. This is Mr. Earth here, and I thought I would just do a quick little video, or as quick as we can, about how to set up the mini project about the box volumes. So I'm going to go ahead and do this on Geogebra. This doesn't really work very well on the calculator. You can kind of do it on the calculator, but it's a little bit hokey. You definitely don't get the same dynamic input and output as you do on Geogebra. So I'm going to recommend you do it on Geogebra, even if you do have a graphing calculator. So alright, so here we go. I got Geogebra running. So the first thing to do is make our piece of paper, our virtual piece of paper, like we do in class. So I'm going to come down here to input and type in paper width equals 8.5. And that's going to change later, but for now just paper width 8.5, and also paper length equals 11. I'm going to do this kind of fast because we already did this together in class, but in case you want a refresher or you were absent the day, this is what we do. So we set that up. Now we actually have to make a rectangle with that length and width. So I'm going to come over here to this button, and right now it says line, but we actually, if you hold it down, we get segments, and what we want is segment with given length. So you know, it just occurred to me before I click that, because we're about to make line segments, and there's going to be all sorts of lines and circles going on everywhere. And it's going to be a little bit confusing with the axes showing. So really, I'm just going to hide my axis right now. So let me go ahead and do that. On the Chromebook and web versions, there's a button right here you can do it. But on the downloaded PC version, I'm just going to go ahead and right-click on here and click this button that says axes, and that turns the axes off. Just I want them out of the way. Alright, so now let me come back up here, click here, go to segment with given length, and I'll just start my bottom left corner over here, and then it asks for what length we want to make it, so I will make it be paper width. So I type in paper width for length, boom, there's a segment where the length is 8.5. And over here, segment got created. It's the name of this segment is small a. Notice the name of this point is capital A, the name of the segment is small a. Alright, so now I want a vertical segment sticking up over here where the length of it will be paper length, or in this case 11. Unfortunately, I don't know how to make vertical segments on Geogebra, so what I'm going to have to do is go through an extra step where I make it horizontal first and then rotate it up. Kind of unfortunate. If any of you guys figure out how to make the vertical segments, please let me know. It'll save us some steps. But for now, I'm just going to have to do this again. So we got it set for segment with given length. Again, I'm going to start at A. A couple people started with B by accident on the class today, but you start with A, and this time when it says given length, we're going to put in paper length instead of paper width. So notice it overlaps. It's a new segment called B. It overlaps the old one, but that's not really where I want it. I want it up here. So the only way I know how to make it vertical is to take this one and make a copy of it rotated and then hide the original. So I'm going to come down here to input, and I'm going to type rotate. And inside the parentheses, I'm going to say I have to tell it what to rotate. So I want to rotate the segment I just made, which is lowercase b. Don't put capital case B because that's a point. Remember, uppercase is points. In this case, we got lowercase b, which is that big long segment, comma, and now comes how much you want to rotate it by, which is 90 degrees. So I type in 90, but now I also need the degree symbol. So the degree symbol, you have to hit this little alpha key over here, and there's the degree symbol right there. So there it is, 90 degrees. And then one more comma, you have to give it the center of rotation. So I'm spinning this around this way, so it's spinning around the point A. And I have to use a capital A this time. If you use lowercase a, it's that segment. We want capital A for that point. And then close the parentheses, hit enter, boom. So it made that. So it's extending off the screen a little bit. So I'm actually going to, let's do a little zoom action. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. I'm going to click zoom out and just click somewhere. There we go, just so we can get a better picture of what's going on there. Alright, so there's my vertical segment. But now I got to hide this original one. So the easiest way to hide it is you come over here to these little blue bubbles, and if the blue bubbles are filled in blue, that means it's showing on the screen. If you turn it off, then it's not showing. So I want to turn off this B, so I'm going to click it, and boom, the segment disappeared. But there's also that point hanging out there. I don't want that, so I'm going to go to capital C, click it, boom, gone. Alright, so now I just got, that's the bottom edge and the left edge of my rectangle. I got to finish off the rectangle. I think the easiest way to finish it off is just go over to this button and choose perpendicular line. And I'm going to choose it to go through this point and be perpendicular to this segment. So So there's that one. I'm going to do it over here. I'm going to say, all right, I want it to go to this point, be perpendicular to that. So it made these entire lines. Of course, we don't want the entire lines. We just want these segment points. So I'm going to come over here to point mode. Make sure hovering over both so they're highlighted. Click a point there. Now I'm going to come over to my lines and turn them off. So turning D off, turning C off. And I'm going to redraw them as segments. So I go back to regular segment. I don't need segment with length, given length this time, just regular segment. Click on C prime, click on D, there's that segment. And then let's click on D, and click on D. Alright, there's my piece of paper. Awesome. Alright, now we got to cut out the corners. So how much we're going to cut out is going to vary depending on the cut size. So let's create a new parameter. So we're going to come down to input and type cut size equals, got to start somewhere. I'll just start at 2. So boom, a new number appeared over here, cut size 2. And now I'm going to make circles of radius 2 around each of the corners. So to do that, we come up here with the circle button and hold it down and go to circle with center and radius. So that's the option we want. So I click that, and then I click the point I want, and then when it asks the radius, I'm going to say I want the radius to be cut size. And I'm just going to do that again for each of the 4 corners. And I'm sure there's an easier way to do this by just kind of translating the circles, but oh well. It's only 4, not that hard to do. So, okay, so we got it. So one way to kind of double check that you're doing it right at this stage, no, let's not do that. I know we're doing it right. So I'm just going to go to point mode now and put points at each of the intersections of the circle and the rectangle. You can also do this with the intersection command. You don't have to use the point mode and make sure they're both highlighted. Just to show you how you would do it with the intersection command, you come over to point, hold it down, and actually go to this intersect. And then you'd select the circle, select the segment anywhere, and it creates that for you. So select the circle, select the segment, select the circle, segment. I'm going to go back to point mode just because I think it's easier because you can do it in a single click instead of 2 clicks. And there you go. All right, so I've got all those points. So and now I'm going to draw like what we did on the cardstock. So I'm going to draw segments, regular segments, not segments with length. So there to there, there to there, going across, going across. Okay, so and now we need to mark the intersection points of those lines. So again, we could either use intersection or points. I'm just going to be careful. The thing you have to be careful of if you're doing points is if you're doing points, you might miss. Like if I click right here, I think, oh yeah, I'm close enough, and I click. Here, I'll do it. I'll make a mistake on purpose. Like, oh, I got it, but really I missed it. So I'm going to do Control-Z to undo that and put it actually right on where it's supposed to be. Okie dokie. So I've got all those on there. So at this stage, really all I want are the dots. So I no longer need the circles. The circles are listed under conic, so I'm going to turn those off. No, I'm just hiding them so you don't see. They're still there, they're just invisible. And I really don't need any of my segments either, so I'm going to hide all my segments. I'm just clicking on these blue dots, making them all disappear. So alright, there I go. I've got basically 4 groups of 4 dots. So at this stage, I'm ready to kind of make my paper. So I'm going to trace the outline of the paper as a polygon. So the polygon tool is right here. Looks like sort of a reddish triangle. So I click and hold that and choose the very first option, which says polygon. Don't choose regular polygon. So it's just normal old polygon, just this top one. So I click it. And now I'm just going to move around and follow the dots of where the paper goes. You can actually start anywhere. I'm just going to cut out each of the corners. So I'll just start here. And I'm not clicking and holding, by the way. I'm just single clicking. And you can see it's forming the polygon. I'm just moving around the paper, but making sure I don't hit the corners. Now when you get to the last one, the very last one, you have to go back to where you started with. So I started down here. So boom. And there it makes it. It's awesome. Alright, so far it looks pretty good. I got all these kind of labels on here. Let me actually turn off those labels. That's getting kind of messy. So to avoid that problem in the future, I'm going to go over here to Options. It's in a different place if you're actually running it from the web. But here on the downloaded PC version, I click Options. And then underneath it says Labeling. And right now it's automatic. But actually, I just want to set it for new points only. So there's that. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go to Options, go to Rounding, and let's make it be 3 decimal places, because that's going to be more useful for us later to actually see 3 decimal places. This option also exists in the web. It's in that little crazy 3-line thing in the corner there, and that's where that option is for changing rounding option and labeling. Alright, so we're doing well so far. However, I do want to point out there is a slight problem with the way we have it set up. If I scroll to the top here, if we take cut size, I'm going to turn, right now cut size doesn't have a bubble, so there's nothing visual on the screen. But if I click my little blue bubble there and turn it on, you can see it's actually a slider. And one problem with the way it's set up now is if I change my cut size, oops, I made a point, I forgot I was in polygon mode, didn't mean to be that, let me undo that. So cut size back on. I meant to be in grabby mode, so this is the move button. So now I can grab this point and move the cut size. And you can see, okay, I'm changing to all these different cut sizes. But I can go too big. I can like overlap the cut. I can go a cut size 5, but I really shouldn't be able to go over 4.25. So we need to limit how much we can do this cut. So let's come up over here and create a new parameter called cut limit. And what should cut limit be equal to? Well, whichever the shorter side is, which in this case happens to be the paper width at 8.5 instead of 11, but whichever one's shorter, we shouldn't be able to go past the halfway point of that. So the command to do this is you say, our cut limit is going to be min, to take the minimum of the paper length, comma, paper width. Close the parentheses. So I'm taking the minimum of those two. Oops, I misspelled length. Stick a G in there. All right, awesome. So I'm going to take the minimum of paper length and paper width, and then after it figures out which one's smaller, I'm going to divide that by 2. And that's going to be my parameter called my cut limit. So I push enter, and right now my cut limit's 4.25. But I still have to tell it, don't let the cut size go more than that. So to be able to do that, I'm going to right-click on cut size and go Object Properties. And I think the best thing to do is adjust it as a slider. So, but the right click on the Chrome pad, don't forget, is you click with 2 fingers. So for the minimum really doesn't make sense to do a -5 cut. How do you cut -5 inches out of something? So the smallest cut should be 0. And don't forget, on the Chromebook, we discovered you have to push enter. And apparently you do on the PC too. So I push enter there, otherwise it doesn't take it. You can't just click to the next window. Then for the maximum, now here's where we say, I don't want it to go bigger than cut limit. And for the increment, oh, see, I didn't do it. I got to push enter. So there you go. There's the enter. For the increment, that means like when you move this point on the slider back and forth, how much is going to move by. If you notice, it was really jerky before. That's because the only cut size available, because the increment was 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's not nearly fine-tuned enough. So let's do 3 decimal places. Let's do 0.001 and push enter on that. All right. Looks good. So now, make sure I'm in grabby mode here. Now when I move the cut size, oh, it's so much smoother. Yes, yes. Okay, great. Also note that when I drag it to the maximum, it stops letting me cutting. I can't overlap onto myself. So it just goes where it's supposed to go. All right. The next thing I want to do is actually color in the bottom part of the box. Because remember, we fold these edges up. And this part right here, between M, N, O, and P, that's going to be the bottom of the box. And for reasons you're going to see in a minute, I actually want that as its own separate entity. So I'm going to go back to Polygon, make sure Polygon's selected right here, and make a separate polygon just for the bottom of the box. So M, yours might be called different, but... And go back to where you started with. And there it is. And I'm actually going to darken that up, make it a different color. So I'm going to right-click, go Object Properties, change the color of it a little bit because it looks a little goofy being the same color as the edge. So how about I'll make it be a dark purple. There we go. And I can even make it a little more opaque. Cool. So I went ahead and did that. Alright, so now I just be in move mode. There's my cut size. And at this stage, I don't actually need all of these segments and points and all that. So they've served their purpose. So I'm going to basically hide every single thing. So I'm just going to click down the points, hiding every single thing. I'm sure there's a much easier way to do this that just says hide all points, but I'm not familiar enough with Geogebra to know what that is. So I'm just, oh, don't hide the polygons. We want those. Let's hide the segments. clickety clickety click. Go through, hiding, hiding, hiding. Oops, missed the blue button. Did I get them all? Yep, that's it. So now you can see there's the paper. It's a little bit harder to see the paper without the outlines there, but maybe I should have left those outer segments. But okay, cool. Actually, you know what? Let me darken up the edges of that just a tad. So I'm going to go ahead, right-click, properties. So now I'm on the outside part. So let me just make that like just a little darker. Yeah, cool. All right, now it's look a little bit more visible. Okay, so we've got our paper. The reason why I had you do the bottom of it is now it's much easier to compute the volume of this box. So remember, the volume of the box is whatever the area of the base is times the height. Well, it turns out Geogebra is really nice, and poly 2 is the name for our little purple base right there. Poly 1 is the original piece of paper. Poly 2 is just this square right here. So poly 1, poly 2. So the number next to poly 2 right here, that's its area. Took me a little while to figure that out. That's the area. So it turns out if we want to get the volume of the box, we're going to take this area and multiply by the height of the box. But if you imagine like what we built last week out of cardstock, the height of the box is essentially just this length right here that got taped together when we physically built it. But this length right here is the same as the size of the corner we cut out. So the height of the box really is just the cut size. So I'm going to come down here to input, and I'm going to type box volume equals, and the way we're going to get the box volume is we're going to do poly 2, because that's the name of that base square, times, remember the way Geogebra does times is with a space bar. So space, poly 2 means the base, times, and now we're going to type cut size, because that's going to be the height. So poly 2 space cut size means take poly 2, multiply by cut size. And push enter, and you'll see a new variable appeared up here called box volume. So, and notice that number is going to change. If we drag this around, so here when the cut size is small, hey, box volume is kind of tiny, 27.4. As I start slowly increasing the cut size, I see the volumes going up. 43, 40, 51, 55, it's getting really big. But at some point, hey, look, it hit 66 for a while. Now it's 64, 60, 59, 57, 56. At some point, it reached a peak and it went down. So what we could try to do is just view all these numbers, but as we say in math, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So how about we make a graph of these numbers? So let's graph the box volume as a function of the size of our cut. So we could put the graph here on this page, but that's going to get really messy. So we're going to go ahead and open up a second graphing window. So the way to open up the second graphing window is you click View. And by the way, on the Chromebook or web version, again, it's off to the side here, and you click View. But here it's up here at the top of the title bar, View. So we want to see a second graphics window, so that's Graphics 2. So I'm going to click that, and over here a second window appeared. So here's our original, so this is the Algebra window, this is the Graphics window, and this is Graphics 2 window. It's a second window. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, so I'm going to grab the edge, extend it out like that. I can even extend into my picture there, but keep it like this. Alright, so here's the Graphics window. So it's really important, by the way, if you can tell here, this is bolded and this is not. That's where the focus is right now. So this is the window that's active. If I click anywhere in this one, then this one gets bolded and this one's active. And now this one's not bolded anymore. You can look at the titles. So it's important that from now on, if we want things to appear in this window, in the new window, we have to make sure this is the active one. So I'm going to click here, just being in regular move mode and clicking, that'll do it. So what I want to plot is, remember, the x-axis is the cut size. The y-axis is going to be our volume, our box volume. So let's create a point. That point, I'm going to call it box point. And notice helps if I spell it right, box point. Notice I put it in with a capital B. If you're going to create a point, you should start with a capital letter. So box point with a capital B is going to be equal to, and the x-coordinate is going to be cut size, comma, the y-coordinate is going to be box volume. It's kind of cool. This is a quick way to know if you've typed it correctly or not, is because it colors it a different color if it's already something that's been defined, which is kind of cool. Alright, so right now, if we look at cut size and box volume, my cut size is 1.49. That's going to be in the x, so 1.49 is like somewhere in between 1 and 2. And my box volume is basically 65.95. It's way, way up here. So even when I push enter on this for the box point, So it's there, and it should be in this window, but I don't see it. I don't see it because my y-axis isn't high enough. So I'm going to come over here and go to Move Graphics View. And I'm going to actually take this whole thing, move it down a little bit, and grab the y-axis. So notice it turns into a little double arrow. And just bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. Ah, there's our point. There you are. In terms of this x-axis, right now it's going from 0 to 10. That's way too much, because remember, our biggest cut right now is only 4.25. So I can maybe do something like that. Move it around. All right. So one thing I want to point out now is on this part of the screen, we've got our visual representation of our box with the cut. Over here is what's going to turn into our graph. So notice, let me go back to move mode here. When I grab my cut size slider, I can see as I'm enlarging the cut size, and I can see visually this is getting shrunk, and the volume is going down. On the other hand, let me start off with the whole thing. So here, my cut is so small, I've barely got any volume. But as I'm enlarging the cut, the volume is getting, so look over here at this point, as I'm enlarging the cut, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, then it reaches some peak right about here, and then it starts getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Well, it'd be nice if instead of having to move this really fast and watch that point go, if we could actually just make the entire graph. And there's a command that does that. So that's the Locus command. So I'm going to come down here to input, and what you do is you type locus, and by the way, there actually is a button that does it, but I was having trouble getting the button to work, so I'm just going to use the actual locus command. So you say locus, and then the first thing you do is the thing that's kind of controlling where the mark of the locus is going to be. So I think of it as sort of the pen and the hand that moves the pen. So I want the pen on the box point, so I'm going to type box point first. So locus box point, comma, and now the second thing you put in is the thing that makes the pen move. So in this case, it's dragging the slider around is what makes it move. So I'm going to say box point, comma, cut size. So when you do that, locus is going to say, do the locus of all points of box point as cut size moves on its slider. That's what it's going to do. So when you do it, it should be the entire graph. I hit enter. Oops. All right. So what happened there? Why did it look like that? I accidentally had this one selected and highlighted. We're going to pretend I did that on purpose. So I'm going to hit undo. And this time, I'm going to make sure this is the highlighted one. There we go. So now I'll type it really fast. So locus, box point, make sure you have a capital, comma, cut size. And notice this time the correct window is highlighted. Hit enter. There we go. There's my graph. So notice that each point on the graph represents a possible state the box could be in. But now, so not only can we dynamically move and see how we're creating our box and watching that box point move around the curve, we can do even more. The really cool thing we can do is start adjusting the paper length and paper width. So how about we just turn on those sliders as well? Here's the paper length slider. Watch what happens if I change the size of the paper. That's not going to move this point. It's going to change the graph itself. We can watch the graph morph. Of course, it's going by ones. That's not very exciting. Let me go ahead and actually change that so it goes by like 0.1s or something. So increments, let's go by 0.1s. And might as well set the minimum to 0, the maximum, I don't know what we want the maximum to be. 20 maybe, who knows. Doesn't really matter. So there you go. Now when I grab this, it'll be a lot smoother. And you can see that graph change. And incidentally, you could do the same thing to the width too. So you can, let me go ahead and adjust the min and max on that. So 0, might as well put in 20 for max, doesn't really matter. Let's go up by 0.1s every single time. And I'll turn that slider on. So now I'm adjusting the paper width. So you can adjust the width, and so after the paper length and paper width are fixed, then you can start moving that point around on the same piece of paper and adjust the cut size and figure out where the maximum point is. Alright, so once you got this graph with the nice little picture and the sliders and the graph going, you're ready to go ahead and do the project, or the mini project. So the questions of what you're supposed to do, don't forget what your actual goal is. It's for a piece of paper, and for extra credit, you can do it for a rectangular piece of paper, but for normal credit, do it with a square piece of paper. So on a square piece of paper, let's just say it's, for example, a 7 by 7. So I'm just going to go in here and type 7 for the paper length, 7 for the paper width. Oops. So now this is a 7 by 7 piece of paper, and try to eyeball where the best cut size is. And if you really want, you can use your arrow keys to move one by one. Now right now it's only displaying 2 decimal places there. I thought I'd change it. Maybe I changed it for something else. So I'm going to go back over here and go to Options, Rounding. Make sure it's set to 3 decimal places. So now I can see 3 decimal places here, because it'll be a little bit more accurate, a little bit more precise. So if I want to get the top spot, so you kind of get close to it, and then you can start using the arrow keys to really fine-tune it. And I can also, let's zoom in our picture a little bit so we can see it better there. So you can see I wasn't quite at the max point there. So you can either look at that, or you can also look over here at your box volume, 25.374. If I start adjusting this, let me go back to move mode. So watch this 27.372. I'm just going to start adjusting the cut size. Okay, that's going down. Move it up, move it up, move it up. I'm still going up. 76, 78, 79. So I just keep on pushing it. Whoops. Did I pass the point yet? I kind of picked a weird one with 7. It's a lot easier to see it with 6. But it looks like somewhere, it looks like the best box volume I can to 3 decimal places is 25.407 with a cut size of about 1.165, actually 1.166. In fact, I believe the actual answer is 1.1666666 repeating. So we only have 3 decimal places there, so it's a little bit hard to see. But and then you can figure out what the best max volume is there. But it looks like right now I'm right at the peak. So, all right. So you now have enough to go ahead and answer that question. If you got any other further questions, either about the GeoGebra sketch or how to answer the questions, just feel free to ask in class. Good luck, everybody.